Artists suffer. This is what my mother used to say to me. I was the only member of my family who had no art. And my mother said, it's good. Artists suffer. You're the smart one. You'll go out and have a job. Well, Mom was an international quilt artist, and I never was allowed to touch her machines. And Dad, he was a goldsmith, and I was afraid of his lathe. And when the blowtorch went off near my ear, that was the end of my apprenticeship with him. My sister is a professional musician. We won't say any more about that. I had no art, but I had a job. And I noticed over the years that there was a lot of suffering associated with a job. And if I was going to have a job and suffer, I might as well have some art too. Well, my son's preschool graduation was coming up, and I was responsible for bringing dessert for 40 people, and I thought, I have art. So I went to Giant and I bought 8 boxes of Rice Krispie cereal and 16 bags of marshmallows and a set of graduated cake pans. And I made a 5-tier wedding cake style monstrosity made entirely of Rice Krispie treats, decorated with M&Ms, gummy worms, and it was fabulous. And I took pictures and I showed my family. I made this. It is art. They said, well, that's certainly something, but I don't think art is quite what it is. It's art if Honey Boo Boo is an entertainer. It's like Honey Boo Boo art. You didn't say it couldn't be tacky. So I had another vision, and I went to my yard and I cut down a 6-foot piece of my tree branch and I spray painted it white, and I folded 367 origami cranes, and I hung it in the tree branches, and then I mounted it above my child's bed in the ceiling, and I invited my family over and I said, this is art. And my mother said, that is a fire hazard. You don't understand, dear. You must suffer for your art. Art involves suffering. And I said, I can suffer? So I took up oil painting, like Rembrandt and Picasso. And the class I was in was about a still life. We made a pear and an apple. And I watched carefully as the instructor made the pear. And then I tried to do it, but I couldn't. And he took my hand, and still I couldn't do it. And I was a child being left behind. And finally, my pear looked like a minivan had broken it and run over it. So when we got to the apple, he did it instead. And he said, I wanted you to have something you could take home from this class and be able to hang on your wall. He saw I was devastated, and he said, wait, why don't you write down what you think you see, and we can figure it out from there. So I wrote, and I wrote, and I turned the page over, and I wrote some more. And I said, I'm done now, and he came over, and he said, bless your heart. And if you're Southern, you know that's the kiss of death. Bless your heart, dear, you're a writer. You're not an artist. Oh, wait, but writers, what a great group of people who can suffer. You can sit in a room by yourself for days on end, typing alone. But I'm an introvert, and I like to do that, so I'm suffering kind of light. And writers, they drink to excess. Oh my God, let me suffer that way. But writers, they are open to an infinite variety of rejection. Ooh, that's not so good. I'll let my son open up the rejection letters. He can't really read anyway. And the best thing is, lots of women writers hit total bottom and kill themselves. Wait, no, we are not going to suffer that much. So I signed up for my first writing class, and it was held on the one day of the week that I could get a babysitter. So it was called Research Techniques for Advanced Nonfiction Writing. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I was a researcher in real life, and I wasn't really suffering doing that. And I could pitch a pretty good idea, because there was a family story about how my grandparents met at one of the biggest disasters in Washington, D.C. history. After 2 days of snow, 3 feet of of snow fell and loaded on top of the Knickerbocker Theater, and it collapsed, killing more than 100 people. And my grandparents met in that disaster among the carnage of the mangled bodies and the blood. My grandfather, he rode a horse in the cavalry for the U.S. Army. And my grandmother served coffee. So I had like a Titanic thing on dry land, and I was proud. And I pitched my idea, and my instructor said, "Oh, that's very nice, dear." And I had a sinking feeling that once again, maybe I wasn't suffering enough for my art. And I said, "But I'm going to the Historic Society in DC, and I'm going to spend a lot of time by myself in the library looking at old stuff." That's suffering, isn't it? The next woman pitched. And she's the kind of lady, and I say this with great admiration, she'd probably pee standing up. Kay said, "Well, I'm going to do a story about absinthe. You know, that green liquor. I'm going to find 4 bars in DC, and every weekend my husband and I are going to go to the bar, and we're going to drink absinthe, and I'm going to see if it's true that stuff really makes you hallucinate." Wait a minute. Where the hell is the suffering here? She's going bar hopping for 4 weekends in a row, and she's going to make a writing project out of that, and I'm going to spend hours in the historical library sitting there alone with dusty papers. It didn't seem right. It seemed like I was suffering and she wasn't at all, and yet this was art. The next lady, Savannah, she came up and she said, "I have a friend who used to be a dancer." Right, a friend who used to be a dancer, and I don't think we're talking about Martha Graham. "I am going to go to my old club, my friend's old club. I am going to introduce myself to the other dancers, and I am going to talk to the clientele." What? Wait a minute. One is going to bars, the other is going to strip clubs, and I'm sitting in the Historical Society. This is not right, and they are considered artists. Well, finally, the third one comes up, and she is so lovely and so beautiful, the kind of 22-year-old that every woman my age hates, except she's so nice, you feel guilty for hating her, because when she heard my Knickerbocker Theater pitch, she said, "Oh, that's fascinating. I think you'll have a really good time with that." And she looked perfect, like Snow White, with green eyes and short dark hair, and skin so perfect you could not see a pore, even if you had binoculars. I thought, right, this kid is going to pitch a program that's going to be something like American Dolls, the untold sexism story, or something about Barbies, and I wasn't worried about it. Mine was not going to be the worst project after all, because she looked like she had just taken her first communion, and then she started to speak. "I'm a photographer, and I want to learn how to put prose in my photographs to make it sound better." Well, so far we're good, right? This is not so bad. "I like to take pictures of abandoned buildings, and I like to take off my clothes and take pictures of myself in the abandoned buildings, and I like to take pictures in the abandoned buildings with my clothes off, holding animal skulls." What I learned for the next 6 weeks as I admired all these women and their accomplishments and their artistic flair was that you didn't have to suffer to be an artist. And if I wanted to make Rice Krispie treat cakes or origami cranes or tell a silly story about the Knickerbocker Theater, it was still art, and I wasn't stripping, thank God.